Hey, like the Fraternacons? Want more Fraternacons? Go to the new channel. One new Fraternacons video a week there, edited by my brother. Link in the description. Video! People keep asking me to do another What's the Best, but come on guys, it hasn't been so long since the last one, right? Shit. The last one was before February. Where the hell has my life been disappearing to? Anyways, sorry for not keeping up with these. You'd think that the series that helped kickstart my channel would get more respect from me, but I am nothing if not a disrespectful boy. Or more that I just got really busy because a lot of the new stuff started dropping very fast. Normally one of these would come out later in a week, or in this case, earlier, as I was going to do this for the very previous video, but someone asked me if I could do it today, and I mean, hold off on a video for 3 days? Sure, why not? So some of you think that you have the final rankings pegged. We'll see about that by the end. Anyways, before watching the video, go to the community tab and vote on which figure you think I'll pick as the best. It only lets you set up a poll to have 5 total options, and there are 6 figures here, so I'm going to have to set it up as 2 separate polls. Each one will have the option to select I voted in the other poll. I'm going to cover these in the order I originally reviewed them in. And before we start, can I just say how good all of the car modes look lined up? And welcome to What's the Best? What's the Best Studio Series 86 Wave 1 figure. So, Hot Rod. I still catch heat for not calling this a micro masterpiece. Let me explain. For me to call something a micro masterpiece, one of the criteria I judge by is that the figure either needs to have no bad angles, or if it has bad angles, they need to be few and narrow. You shouldn't just be able to turn the figure around and see a whole lot of fucking wrong. But it doesn't stop there because you can already see his leg kibble from the front, and the further you get around him, the worse it gets until you reach the back and it's just and that squat neck is also a point against it. Again, not being a micro masterpiece doesn't make something into a bad figure though. This is in fact a very good little hot rod, if a little back heavy. From the front, there's very little to complain about except for said squat neck, and his arm pipes do come across a bit short. Also, his face doesn't really capture the essence of the character, except for maybe that one shot in the movie where he looks really robotic. Poseability on this guy is really good for a Chuck figure. His joints all tend to have more range than most of War for Cybertron, and he has something kind of approximating butterfly joints in his shoulders. They do help some, but they are very awkward to use, and his shoulders almost never look natural due to how they hinge. His hands can open, and I really don't care. He's got a couple cool gimmicks like his flip-out accessories, but most people are going to use these like once ever and then forget they exist. Transformation on this guy is unique and fun. It kind of feels like his lower half is a combination of the Titan's Return and Power of the Prime's hot rods, with his upper torso actually kind of doing the thing you see in the movie where his shoulders flip sides, though it is a shame about the faux forming. The car mode is great, not perfectly screen accurate, but you'd be hard-pressed to care. It's tiny for a Voyager though. I mean, honestly this is good enough that if it were $25 and not $30, I wouldn't complain at all. Sucks that they're turning this into a Commander 2 though. Blur. The figure that inspired the "it's weird" option that you guys can still vote on to this day, even though it's only ever come up like twice since. And yeah, this is still one of the strangest figures I own. His stiff proportions, his unnaturally rubbery feeling plastic, his bizarre transformation that has you partially transform him, then untransform him, then retransform that part again, and then there's that head sculpt. There is a reason this is a monster shelf warmer, and I put it entirely on that head. What the hell is that? Everyone else had some kind of accurate head, but this guy, even Cup, who looked more like Willem Dafoe, and no, I will not stop bringing that up, still looked a bit like Cup. I swear they did this to make him resemble his Cyberverse design, but why would you want to do that? He was in it for like 7 minutes of one episode where he was a douche who acted nothing like Blur, and then died along with billions of others as his whole planet was destroyed, and then that was undercut 2 seconds later by Bumblebee bonking his head and falling on his butt because wacky! Is it clear that I have a problem with the tonal inconsistencies of Cyberverse? I mean, Jesus, I've heard about tonal whiplash before, but that was like sticking my head in a paint shaker and just hoping for the best. Anyways, ugly mug aside, this actually does have things going for it over the Hot Rod in terms of appearance. As unlike Hot Rod, despite all his ugly, he has no bad angles. I mean, anything facing front is kind of by default a bad angle because of but you get it. Posing is a different story though, as Blur's joints are way more limited than the Hot Rod's. He does have more natural shoulders though, even if the vents on top not moving with the rest of the arm is weird. But look at these elbow joints. There is nothing about the design of these arms that says that Blur should only be able to bend 90, while Hot Rod can bend way further. It literally just boils down to they chose not to make it possible because reasons. Transformation on Blur is again really strange. As I mentioned earlier, you have to move his arms down, then up, then down again. It's not an unfun process, but it's not normal either. Also, the locking tabs are all way too strong, requiring extraordinary force to set or unpeg them. Alt mode is a solid little hover needle, though it is a bit too swooped on the front end, and the fact that it can't roll is a bit disappointing. I know it wasn't supposed to have wheels in the show, but that doesn't change the fact that this can't actually hover, so we can't roll it without wheels. Scourge. Well, this is an improvement. Unlike Hot Rod, he's got no bad angles, and unlike Blur, he's not just fucking ugly for no reason. You might argue that he has a bad angle from behind because of how his cape looks, but I'm honestly more concerned about his butt plug butt cheeks. I'd say the difference is, this is a less than perfect angle, not a bad one. I did eventually find out what the open hand is for. Apparently you can hang Hot Rod's Matrix off the thumb, and that makes so much why did they bother? And no, there was not a bad cut there. Who cares if you can hold the Matrix by dangling it off of his stupid thumb? Head is really cool, really well painted, and it screams Scourge, but posability on this guy is nothing too spectacular. His shoulders are more natural than the other two and have more range up as well, but otherwise his limbs aren't remarkable other than to ask, why is 90-degree bends the standard when we just saw with the Hot Rod that they don't have to be? Also, for all intents and purposes, the feet basically don't have ankle tilts. But at least the cape is very dynamic, and I do find this a lot of fun to play with. His transformation is also quite possibly the most enjoyable shell-forming process of all time. The head pulls way back, the shoulders drop way down, and then the wings encase the rest of him. Honestly, it's nice that it has the courtesy to be both brief and fun. This figure is executed so well. In robot mode, he looks just like he's supposed to. In alt mode, he looks just like he's supposed to. And he manages to do that with a very simple transformation, while not just having the alt mode chilling out on him in robot mode despite him being a shelf warmer. Anyways, his nonsensical alt mode sure is a whatever the hell it's supposed to be. It's very much of that. Looks great, whatever it is. Alright, on to the big man himself. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the figure that brought back leader class in spectacular fashion. 86 Grimlock. What can I say about this thing other than I love the look of it? I love the chunkiness of it. I love how it dwarfs all the other figures in the line like a Grimlock should. I love that for once he doesn't have shoulders that will interfere with his peripheral vision, something that would probably be really inconvenient for a warrior who uses a sword. Speaking of swords, you may be noticing the one he's holding. I did not buy this. I swear to God, I did not buy this. This showed up at my house in the most surreal moment I've had in years. The company even says that I bought this and shared the purchase timestamp as well as my bank account information. But I know I did not buy this. I'm not crazy. I swear I'm not crazy. So anyways, now that he has a sword, mini review for the sword. It sucks. Review over. Okay, fine. So it looks good, but the handle is tapered to a point for some reason, so he can't just keep it in his hand because he can only grip like one ring of its atoms. Also, because of the way his arms are set up with his hands hinging in the wrong way, it's very hard for him to use it properly. Though you can fake it by rotating his arms sideways, this will get you some poses, but he can't bend his elbow like this. Review over. Look, I can gush about the robot mode all day, but I do have places to be. Poseability on this guy is easily the most of any of the figures in the 86 line, but in lieu of going over all that, I want to talk about something really cool that I failed to notice until after I did the first review of him. So, his leg is held up by a strong tension joint, but the way they went about doing that is really clever. So here you can see they cut a track into the top of his hip, and if I flip it to here, you can see that there's a rail it's riding on. What that's doing is the rail is getting wider the further along it goes, so it's actually putting more pressure on the track, increasing the tension that's holding the leg in place the further you extend it out to the side. I know this isn't important, but man, I thought that was brilliant when I figured out what they were doing. Transformation. I don't think I hammered on this hard enough in my video about this figure last time. I mean this quite literally. This is the masterpiece figure, but scaled down a small amount with a bunch of tweaks that fixes its flaws. Unfortunately, they didn't fix the way the hands hinge, but nothing is perfect. Anyways, yes, every step here is just a simplified and sturdier version of what the masterpiece does. It's easy and fun to do, and much like the Scourge, you are done before you know it. T-Rex mode is basically flawless, save for the fact that he's missing his front teeth and all the screw holes on his right side aren't covered. I would have gladly given up the shitty wheelie he came with to fix those, but this looks basically exactly correct and I love this figure. Cup. Okay guys, I love you. I am so happy that you all talk to me so much and I am super proud of this community. But you can all stop telling me that his name is based off Pickup now. Cause apparently, I'm the only person on the whole planet who didn't know that little factoid, and every other living being in existence thought it was imperative to share it with me. So thank you, but I know now. And knowing is the gateway of insanity that leads to where the Dark Ones dwell in their void of nightmares beyond the stars without age or time. Cup here's not great. His proportions are wrong, he has a hard time standing, his shoulders are too low, I did notice this before, but he's kind of bow-legged, his head looks enough like Cup, but he's ruined by his gimmick. The limbs falling off crowd is annoying to the point where I often fantasize about gluing them on because they constantly pop off when you don't want them to, especially during transformation. But then I have to remind myself that without these, he doesn't have any swivel joints in his limbs, so I can't even get rid of this BS without ruining like a third of the figure's overall poseability for no reason. And from behind, yeah, that's a pretty bad angle. Poseability is okay, his elbows go hard and his shoulders go harder, but his knees really don't, and outside of that he's pretty bog standard, except for the fact that he's missing wrist articulation for no reason. Transformation on this guy is the worst of all of these figures. It's clashy, you have to thread things through each other, nothing wants to cooperate, and all the limbs want to do is come off, especially going the other way, and sometimes even the shoulders pop off of their joints as well, and when that happens, they are a bitch to fix. And the result is a very, very good alt mode. It is his alt mode, his stupid alt mode, that I guess is supposed to pull a trailer or something like Huffer, but worse and dumber looking. Maybe he's just a golf cart. Like the rest, he's incredibly screen accurate. Definitely more so than Blur and Hot Rod in this mode. The Grimlock is a weird case in this regard, but I'd also say yes to him, and possibly still even more accurate than the Scourge. So he's doing really good on this front. Jazz. The previous What's the Best feels like it wasn't that long ago when it's been months, whereas the Jazz review feels like it's already been a while, but that was last week. What happened to my sense of time? So if you saw that video, you'll remember that I was confused as to why people are saying this figure is easily breakable. Then by the end of the video, a small crack had formed in the windshield. I couldn't do much about it then because I only noticed it while editing the video, and to make a new insert segment for it would have taken at least 30 minutes. For one line, that's not worth it. But now that I'm doing this, I can call proper attention to it and say that yes, I now know how this can break here. I think the crack probably formed when I tried to force the windshield flush with the front of the car, as there is flashing right there, making it a point where pressure can build up as well as a weak point. Just let it sit proud and you should hopefully be okay. Anyways, what can I say about this figure that I didn't in the previous video? It's gorgeous and I love looking at it. Apparently tons of people find it really visually boring, so I got mountains of questions asking if I'm going to use the Toy Hacks repro labels on it. And hell no, I legitimately have not one issue with the way this looks, and there is nothing I would change about it. Normally I can see why people have a different opinion than I do, but this time not at all. To my eye, this looks wonderful. Poseability on this guy is less than stellar. It's similar to the 86 Cup, but it does have more of an excuse to be the way that it is than that did, considering there is an actual reason the hands don't swivel. He has less range on his elbows, but more range on his knees. His shoulders don't go up as far, but the feet are way more stable, so it's pretty tight, honestly. And the transformation I find to be tons of fun too. Alt mode is beautiful. It's probably just barely behind the 86 Cup in how good this looks, simply due to the rear bumper not being a single part, but this is not a slouch when it comes to the rest of the figures in alt mode. This figure makes me super happy, and it's exactly what I wanted to see. So, what's the best? This is actually a pretty easy list for me to make. The hardest part of this one is actually deciding what's the worst. And I think you all know at this point that Cup and Blur are duking it out for not last. On the one hand, both Cup's modes are more accurate to the character they are supposed to be. On the other hand, his transformation sucks, and he really wants to fall apart. Whereas Blur is ugly in his robot mode and less accurate in vehicle mode with a better transformation that's okay, but still not great. They've flipped back and forth in my head a few times now. Each is probably about as equally flawed as the other, but I'm going to have to be putting Blur on the bottom, just like how everyone else who leaves these things on shelves seem to. And so Cup is the number 2 worst. Then I'm going to get controversial. Hot Rod is third from the bottom. Yes, he has more posing than a typical deluxe, but they are still overcharging for him. And yes, he has more than average accessories, but I wouldn't pay $1 more for those, and his back is just too off-model to rate better. Then third from the top is Scourge. He's not super advanced, but I don't feel cheated at all by him, and his set of the 3 main components that make up all Transformers figures, Robot Mode, Transformation, and Alt Mode, are all really good. Second, you know I gotta go with Jazz. His posing is more limited than I'd like, but this guy is successful in both modes like the rest of the figures wish they were, and his transformation is really fun. His only real problem is his fragility, which thankfully mine has only been cracked by and not been destroyed from. And obviously the foregone conclusion is that Grimlock is the winner. Honestly, it's almost unfair to include a true leader in a competition with a couple deluxes, 1 fake Voyager, and 1 real one. He poses better than the best figure in the group. He looks as good as the best looking figure in the group in both modes. He is not being overcharged for, and kind of critically here, he has no real flaws. His hands could hinge a different way, but they aren't a flaw. So, with all of his positives, and not one real negative like any of the others, Grimlock is the best. Okay, Pterodactyl, you were right. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.